Okay, good morning, folks. I'm Michael O'Connor. I'm from Queen's University Belfast. I'm the Institutional Repository Officer up at Queen's. So today I'm going to be delivering a short talk on open access to research publications as one element of the open science, open scholarship that Brita has mentioned in her talk previously. So essentially it's going to be about open access, and in such a narrow time frame I cannot really cover everything, but I'm going to inform you about some of the more salient points about open access. So the structure that this talk is going to take today is as follows. So open access to research is where we start off, explaining what that open access involves, discussing really what's meant by green and gold open access, which is possibly where I'll lose you. I'm going to talk a little bit about the differences between the UK and the Republic of Ireland context as well for open access. And then a little bit of a mention about what we do at Queen's. So it's a case study of what I do at Queen's University. And then I'm going to conclude with some useful links. And just for a point of reference, so once you receive these slides or once they're circulated, they're really for you to mull over and chew over, and a lot of the slides are hyperlinked as well, so they're going to take you to the relevant URLs, so whenever you wish to pursue them in the future. Okay, so let's get started. So I think the starting point ought to be plotting out where we are currently. So open access is no longer a new phenomenon. It's firmly established as a means of publishing or making available academic outputs or research, and open access teams or scholarly communication departments, as they're sometimes called, are firmly embedded in universities, across libraries and research units. So open access is also challenging traditional academic publishing, and by that I mean subscription publishing models, and it's advancing with breakneck speed. So the current landscape abounds with Plan S, the UK Scholarly Communication Licence, the North Statement, CC licences, funders' mandates for open access, transformative publisher agreements, the push for open scholarship, open access, open data, etc. And yet despite this, or perhaps because of this, there is still confusion about what open access to research means, looks like and involves. And this is not exactly helped by the bewildering proliferation of terms. We've got open access, open scholarship, open science, nor is it helped by open access's obsession with colours, green, gold, platinum, nor is it helped by the vast array of technical elements that enable open access, institutional or subject-based repositories, current research information systems, persistent identifiers, and DOIs, etc. So, is it any wonder that we're all a little bit confused and overwhelmed? And this is just the people who know a little bit something about open access. So I think it must be actually altogether quite mystifying and a separate language for people for whom open access is not on your daily horizon. And this is the reason why I'm so delighted to be able to be here to talk to you today, because I can contextualise a little bit about what open access to research looks like within my institution and the work that we're involved in regarding that. So hopefully that will make sense to you what open access is on a very practical level. So after all of that very necessary preamble, let's get started. Okay, so what is open access? So this presentation pivots around the phrase open access to research. What is meant by this? Well, very simply, the things that we do at my institution to make research open access. And all that seems very well and good, but how do we define it? Well, I think there's a plethora of definitions abound at the moment. So it's variously been called a movement, an initiative, a publishing and distribution model for scholarly research, and a challenge to traditional academic publishing, i.e. subscription publishing. But what is understood by the term open access? I think for me the most helpful definition comes from Peter Suber, who's a leading voice in the open access movement, and he describes it as comprising 4 key components. So firstly, it's material that's going to be digital. It's also going to be online, so it's distributed and shared online. It's free of charge. That doesn't mean it doesn't cost anything, it just means it's free at the point of access for you as a researcher. And it's free of standard copyright and licensing restrictions. So this is usually through the application of a CC license. So this means that an open access license is applied, and that will remove a lot of the restrictions about use and reuse. And when we discuss material relating to open access, we're usually referring to research outputs. And a research output is anything that's the end product of research. So it can include research articles. Most of you are probably thinking of research articles when you think of research outputs, but it can also include other content, a conference paper, a chapter in a book, a monograph, a thesis, and research data as well. So as you can tell, open access runs a wide gamut of content, but what is the reason why? What's the purpose of open access? What does it do? I think really at its simplest, it's about changing the way in which things have been historically done regarding journal publication. So in the past, if you wished to get your research published, your peer-reviewed research published, you had to submit to a journal. And once the research was published, it was placed behind a paywall, meaning only people that subscribed to that content could access it. Now, since journal subscriptions are prohibitively expensive, this has meant that only institutions with very healthy funds are in a position to pay these subscriptions and thus gain access to the latest up-to-date research. So it hardly needs to be stated that this is not exactly fair, particularly to poor institutions and those in developing countries. So also these journal subscriptions continue to rise exponentially as library budgets plummet. So many researchers also, in order to get published, will sign their rights away to the publishers. So this has been the cornerstone of academic publishing up until open access. Publishers are getting more powerful and rich, and researchers are having no rights to the material that they authored. So one could say that the purpose of open access is about fundamentally challenging this and redressing the balance of things. It's about a different way of publishing. It's about achieving free access to research. It's about making it easier to share knowledge, to encourage reuse and collaboration, and this advances scholarship and benefits everyone. Now, open access, as most of you will know, is about removing those paywalls and about removing those barriers to research, and also ensuring that the researcher retains the rights to the work they have authored. That's very important as well. So if I haven't managed to convert you yet to the benefits of open access, perhaps the next slide might tip things in my favour. Okay, so let's pose the question, how is making your research open access a good thing? On the left-hand side is an infographic that outlines the multiple advantages of the open access model. Is it distinct there? Can you see? Okay, that's good. Okay, so generally speaking, if you wish to make your research open access, if you make your research open access, it's going to be more highly cited. So if you want to maximize exposure to your research and have other researchers cite your work, make it open access. Anyone with an internet connection can find your research when you publish open access. This is especially important in the developing world, as it means that irrespective of how wealthy or poor the country is, anyone can access the latest findings of open access research online. And this is potentially very democratizing. The right-hand side captures a few testimonials of researchers at Queen's who have felt that making their research open access has been tremendously positive. Again, the benefits have tended to be increased exposure of one's work, higher citation, and also the fact that research can be accessed by people beyond your discipline, so it becomes cross-disciplinary, and that's very important as well. So it's going to be necessary now at this stage to drill down a little bit into specifics and the types of way in which you can make your research open access. So I usually find that once I start discussing the difference between green and gold open access, people tend to tune out, so please bear with me. So in an effort to clearly differentiate between these two principal means of publishing, I want to show you a demo. So here I just happen to have very conveniently two biscuits with me. One is conveniently green and one is also equally conveniently gold, and both represent published research. The green one is here for everyone, one for everyone in the audience. Okay, this is for you, each one, and it's free. You can have it. You have to pay nothing, and it's wrapped in a fairly plain cover. You do, however, have to wait maybe a year or two before you can have it. Okay, so it's just going to be tantalizing, sitting on a plate for a year. But it's yours, you don't have to pay anything for it. At the end of that period, you can go and take it, it's yours. Okay? This one represents gold open access, okay? So again, a biscuit, another biscuit treat, wrapped in a different wrapper. Note the wrapper is a little bit more slick. It's not a plain wrapper, it's very sleek. Okay, we might be fooled by that sort of sleek exterior. There's no waiting around for it. It's going to be on the plate. You can eat it now. Except to eat it now, you would have to pay a little charge. It might cost you a lot of money to do that. So this is a sort of very gross oversimplification of what's meant by green and gold open access. And this is also making me hungry as well. So, okay, so green and gold. So green open access is ultimately content that's free. So it's when you publish in a traditional subscription journal and you upload the paper to a subject-based or an institutional repository, and this is what's called self-archiving. And a repository is simply a storage area, a large digital holding place for research outputs. And at Queen's, our repository is called Queen's Research Portal. At Trinity, it's called Tara. At UCC, it's Cora. At UU, it's called, imaginatively, Ulster Institutional Repository. At NUIG, it's Aaron, and NUIM is Mural. And those are just a selection of a few repositories on the island. Okay, so the research, once it's been uploaded to the repository, it might be embargoed for 1 to 2 years. Okay, so that's what Green Open Access is about, and it depends on the discipline. And what you upload is a very plain, clear Word version of the published paper. But this type of publication actually increases your likelihood of being cited as a researcher over gold. So now, gold open access, what's that all about? It's slightly different. There may be costs associated with it. Sometimes a researcher might have to pay a thing called an article processing charge, or an APC, which is a nice tidy little phrase, but it kind of obscures what the reality is. Those article processing charges can be anything from £500 up to £5,000. So it can be very expensive. So gold open access is also about publishing in an open access journal or a hybrid journal. And when you publish gold OA, you aren't subject to any embargoes, so you can access it immediately. And it's also the publisher's version of the paper that's uploaded, not the plain Word document. And researchers tend to have a preference for the research being packaged in that final published version with the logos, and it looks sleeker. But it's exactly the same content that's put in the repository, but Green Open Access is just a plain Word version. Now, obviously, I'm going to say that because my area of work is Green Open Access. So apart from the fact that open access is a good thing, research is shared and disseminated more widely, why are we devoting half a day to the conference, to this topic? Well, I think open access is something that's only going to expand and become more prevalent. And if you work with researchers, you need to know something about open access. There's going to be variation as well about how embedded open access is within your institution and what the national frameworks are for open access and how the situation varies between the UK and ROI. So now I'm going to talk a little bit about this. So this leads us to the open access landscape and the differences between the Republic of Ireland and the UK. I think one of the fundamental differences is that in the UK, open access is mandated by means of the research exercise framework. So in the UK, open access to research builds upon 10 years of policy, of research and policy in this area. So in the UK, we have something called the REF, the Research Exercise Framework, and this is a system whereby research is evaluated or adjudicated, and it determines how well your research is ranked, and this in turn determines the ranking of your research, the ranking of your school, of your faculty, of your institution, and it determines how much money your school, your faculty, your institution receives. It has implications for tenure, promotion, all those sorts of things. And in order that your research in the UK is eligible for REF, the UKRI insists that you have to upload your research to an institutional repository within 3 months of acceptance by a publisher. So this relates to research articles and conference papers as well. Funders also have certain open access requirements, for example, the Wellcome Trust. And that's the context for explaining open access in the UK. But in the Republic of Ireland, open access isn't really mandated in the same way, but there are some very encouraging moves towards embedding it nationally. For example, you've got the National Framework on the Transition to an Open Research Environment, and that's been developed in recent months. And this is the first step in a process to create a national action plan for the transition to an open access research environment in Ireland. And its aim is to make scholarly research publications resulting from publicly funded research to be made open access from 2020 onwards, and that's associated with North, the National Open Research Forum. Also, some other ROI context is IRAL recently advertised a post for Open Scholarship Officer a few months ago at Maynooth University, and the purpose of that is to support IRAL's open access negotiations. And the IRAL also announced that they were adopting LIBRA principles for these OA negotiations. So while there's slightly different contexts there, the UK and the ROI are slightly different. What unites us is the bedlam that awaits us at the moment, and that is Plan S. Okay, so Plan S is going to be relevant whether you're in the Republic of Ireland or whether you're in the UK, because in the UK, if you're UKRI funded or if you're Wellcome Trust funded, you're going to be subject to Plan S. And in the Republic of Ireland, if you're funded by Science Foundation Ireland, Plan S is going to be relevant to you. So under this plan, any researcher who is publicly funded has to publish their work in open repositories in journals that are available to all by 2021. But it's very unclear at the moment about the implementation of this in such a short time frame. So confusion abounds. So if anyone could explain to me Plan S or how it's going to work, please do so. But the one constant, I think, between us all, irrespective of what the national framework is that open access is our current reality, and it also is our current immediate future. There is no escaping it. So we all need to know a little bit about it, I think. So far, the focus of this talk has been on outlining open access, explaining it, contextualizing it, and all of that is incredibly helpful. But you might be wondering, where can I access where can I access resources, the good stuff, the stuff that's digital, that's online, that's free of charge, that's free of standard copyright and licensing restrictions? They're all conveniently captured on this slide. Okay, so the left-hand side represents platforms and databases and web extensions and directories that provide access to open access content. So it's basically scholarly and peer-reviewed research articles particularly. So you've got DOAJ, Core, Open Door, the on paywall and open access button. And on the right-hand side, what I provided is a list of some of the main institutional repositories on the island. And if you're not familiar with the repository, if your own repository, you may wish to acquaint yourself with it after today. Please check it out because there's going to be lots of good things in your institutional repositories. So go in, please go discover. Once you receive these slides, each of those components are all hyperlinked, so it's going to take you straight to the resource. Okay, so this slide is now going to provide information at what I do at Queen's. So at Queen's, I'm part of the open access team that comprises 6 of us. And if my boss is watching the recording, we at Queen's University are committed to open access. Okay, hello. Right, so at the heart of what we do is we make research outputs available online, free to use and share. So this really involves research articles mainly, but it can include conference proceedings, book chapters or monographs, as well as electronic theses. And these are uploaded by the researcher to our current research information system, which is called PURE. And the open access team will validate these research outputs, applying where appropriate the relevant license and the embargo period. And this ensures that our institutional repository, which is called Queen's Portal, is populated with a range of open access content. And I include a screen grab on the right-hand side there of our portal, what it looks like. And this is hyperlinked. So again, what other work do we do? We provide funding to pay for the article processor charges to make Research Gold open access. And this is derived by 2 funds at Queen's. One is called the Charity Open Access Fund, or COAF, and the University or CUK Open Access Block Grant. In addition to this, since open access is a requirement of REF eligibility, all researchers have to upload their journal, article or conference paper within 3 months of acceptance. And this is really the mainstay of the work that we do. So we make sure that they populate the portal with their research within that 3 months time frame so that they're REF compliant. We also provide continuous guidance and advice to researchers to ensure that they're REF compliant, but also we give lots of information to staff who are unfamiliar with the REF or open access at our institution. So let's move on to emerging areas. So there's 2 probably main emerging areas that are happening with Queen's at the moment in our department, and one is making theses open access. So at Queen's, we're committed to widening open access beyond simply published research and, for example, theses. So from September 2019 onwards, it's going to be compulsory for all of our postgraduate research students to upload an electronic version of their thesis into our institutional repository in addition to a standard hard copy. So to date, we've got about 300 full-text e-theses in the portal, and this number obviously is going to rapidly expand in the immediate future. Running parallel with this is the fact that we're also undertaking a retrospective digitisation project in which we have digitised 200 heavily used theses and we've made them available on our portal. And the purpose of this special project is to widen access to the most popular theses because they're a vital source of research but underutilised. And this pilot is part of a wider initiative to digitise and make available on our portal a considerable back catalogue of our theses, which number 14,000 in total. I think as a result of all of this push for e-thesis content, there's a considerable also amount of copyright training that's undertaken as well. And this is provided both for and supplied to both students and staff. So open access to thesis comprises a significant component of what we're doing in the open access team. Additionally, research data is a forthcoming strand that's been embraced by our team. So research data management covers the entire research data lifecycle, and this we talked about in more detail and much more eloquently by my other speakers. So research data management covers everything, including collection, storage, curation, publication, archiving and disposal. And this is a new service that's come to us in Open Access team. It was dealt with previously by a previous unit, but our role, which is to provide support and guidance on funder requirements, data management plans, copyright, uploading your data sets to Pure, and processing applications for active data storage. And the right-hand side just gives you an indication of the strength of our advocacy work, the intensive range of training that we deliver to postgraduate students and staff, and it can cover everything from bibliometrics, altmetrics, copyright training, the future of academic publishing, how to get published, and also explaining our current research information system. So we're kept incredibly busy, or that's the official line anyway. Okay, so now we're coming near the end. So we're actually incredibly busy in our team with Open Access, and here's a little infographic, and it's our review of the year, reviewing what we achieved in 2018. So it just provides information of all the training sessions that we delivered, how many records the team validated, what percentage of research outputs were ref eligible, which was the most downloaded paper in our portal, how many downloads there are, and so on and so forth. So it just replicates the activity of our team throughout the year. And the right-hand side is an infographic that represents what our focus is and our advice is to encourage researchers to incorporate open access at every stage of the research cycle. So it's making them think about research cycle at each stage when they're conducting their own research. So you'll be glad to know I've come to the end of my talk on open access. I just want to conclude with some very useful links that are going to be helpful to you depending on whatever your level of expertise is with open access. So it includes links from Trinity LibGuide or LibGuide at Queen's, open access as it relates particularly to Ireland, but also the Scholarly Kitchen, which is a great resource, which is a lot more, I suppose, critical of open access as well, which sometimes is useful. So there's enough information here to get you started, to fill in your gaps in your knowledge, and hopefully you will, like me, become an open access evangelist. So thank you very much.